Hi Kelsey, welcome for making some time here on a very busy KubeCon. And I would like to ask you a couple of questions, especially about a Twitter post that you posted about the AI learning, making AI is nice, but you actually should focus on the platform engineering aspect and on developing the process. Can you elaborate a little bit on it?
I'm trying to think of the actual tweet. My guess is it was around, I think a lot of people are thinking about using AI in platform engineering. And I think the pragmatic part is, what will it do? And so if you think about AI today, most people are doing something to generate something, an image, a blog post, a resume. And so in the infrastructure world, what would it generate? And so I think most people would think about configuration management, Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Terraform, Helm, Kubernetes manifest. We're at KubeCon. And so if those are the inputs, then what system is it controlling, right? It's probably controlling the cloud, provisioning a VM, creating a Kubernetes cluster. And some people are like, this is going to be revolutionary. And for me, I'm way more pragmatic. If you are a system administrator, your job is to make decisions. What database should we use? How big should the cluster be? And so that activity involves talking to other humans, right? Like, hey, you need a cluster. How many nodes do you need? Or how big is your application? And in that scenario, you have to make that decision, and you may not want to delegate that to an AI model, right? Because what would the input be? Would just people put in their requirements? You may also have other requirements like we can't run in this particular country because of some security policy. And you may not have a model for all those things. That model will probably live in your head.
Yeah, plus you need to know what your developers want, right? You need to have like an
And it can change next week.
Yeah, exactly.
But either way, through experience, through whatever domain model you walk around with, you will make that decision. And today as a developer or a system administrator, when you make that decision, you are now going to articulate it somehow. You can go into AWS console and click around, or you can write some Terraform, right, to express exactly what you want. In that scenario, some people would say, well, how will AI help in that particular use case? Well, maybe you don't know Terraform. And so if you don't know Terraform, but you do know your requirements, maybe it will be nice to enter those requirements in plain language and have some Terraform spit out. The problem, though, is you don't know Terraform. How do you know if this is even correct? And you also may not know very nuanced things like if you create a cluster using Terraform, and let's say you choose like 25 fields, CPU type, memory type, zone, networking requirements, but there's some fields in that output that if you update them, it will destroy the cluster and recreate it. But again, you don't know Terraform. So you use this LLM, you put in your requirements, and Terraform comes out. You have no idea what you're looking at. And you say, the LLM is smarter than I am, so you deploy it. And then you say it's time for an update. And you give it some new requirements and it makes an update in place. And you go to apply it and you watch in real time as your cluster gets deleted. And all your workloads stop.
Exactly.
And you're like, what's going on? The LLM is like, I did exactly what you asked. Number one, you didn't know what you were asking.
Exactly. You need to know what you're talking about, right? I mean, it's still a job that you're doing. It's still trying to develop a platform.
And you need to understand the decision that's being articulated.
True.
So, is this HCL representative of my decision? And so the trust of that particular model, that particular LLM, I do think you're going to have some accountability. And I think if you're a platform engineer, the accountability is with you.
Yes.
And
definitely.
so yes, it might be a great tool for validation, a template, a head start,
it's like an extra boost. It can help you out and it can do maybe some complicated
or explain.
things. Yeah.
I have this Terraform, I'm not sure what it's doing. And depending on the model, it might be able to explain what these fields mean. Or take an existing Terraform and say, hey, this thing only creates one VM. Could you rewrite it to create 3 VMs? And seeing that example might be a really good way to get started. So that's where I am with current day technology.
Okay, I have another interesting question, because nowadays what I see a lot more is that there are actually platforms as a service. So this, I'm not talking about small things. I'm really talking about whole developer platforms, so that you can just connect to it. It's like almost like the old Cloud Foundry idea of it. What's your view upon those new cloud PaaS services?
Yes, I think a lot of people are familiar with Heroku, App Engine. You have Netlify, you have Vercel. You have all of these platforms, and they're very specific to a very specific domain. If you just want to host a website, maybe using Next.js, it's real simple. Write your Next.js, deploy to Vercel, and your app is running, probably globally, with a lot of best practices built in. In my opinion, that's probably better than the LLM generating Terraform, Kubernetes, and doing all of this for you. Why do that when you could just skip to a platform?
Exactly.
So in those cases, it's great. But the reality is, you are not going to build your entire company on one platform in that case, because they're so specific. You might want to host your front end on Vercel. You may choose to put your APIs on Heroku, and you may choose to run your database with a third party. And in terms of caching, you may suit Akamai is better for streaming video. And so I think when it comes to platforms, I do think people will have dozens of platforms that they stitch together to give themselves a meta platform. And then it begs the question, if you're a platform engineer, what do you do? Right? A lot of platform engineers say, if my company starts using PaaS instead of Kubernetes, then I might have a job. But I don't think that's quite accurate.
No.
If we have to have 5 platforms to run everything we need, then I have to manage that.
Well, you also have to be knowledgeable about it. You need to know what you're dealing with and how to actually service your developers.
Or cost management, right? If you use any of these managed platforms wrong, the cost could spike. Right? There's a cost for convenience. And I think a lot of platform engineers get into cost management, configuration management is obvious. Then you may have data privacy issues, sovereignty issues. So I think a platform engineer's goal, in my opinion, should be able to buy what you can and build what you have to. And then you can find a better platform down the road and you can remove the stuff you had to build, then I think things get better.
Yeah, I think that every company has its own use cases. Maybe like a bank could have more bigger use case for security, and you have to focus on that more. So I don't think there will be like a one-click solution out there, like a one Helm install and then I have my platform. You always have to look into, okay, I need maybe a bit more security, or I need more observability because it needs to be running 24/7 every time. So I think it's eventually there will be easier solutions, but the platform engineer, I think, will always be, the job will always be there, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially if we're going to be in a mode where any company, any developer can do whatever they want, then you're going to have unlimited things that we have to support. And so, yes, there is job security in that.
Thank you so much for coming here and taking your very busy time. It was a very pleasure to interview you.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.